We all have nightmares, but what if those nightmares weren't just random firings of a tired brain? What if they were a preview? A horrifyingly accurate cinema of dark events, playing out in your mind just before they happen in reality. For months, my nights were stolen from me, replaced by a waking prophecy, a reality that became far darker than any dream I could have ever imagined. I never believed in any of this stuff. Psychic abilities, premonitions, fate. I was a man of logic, of blueprints and straight lines. But my own mind forced me to question everything. This is a new channel with incredible stories every day. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. My name is Alex. I'm 32, and by trade, I'm an architectural designer. My world revolves around physics, materials, and the predictable, comforting laws of engineering. I find beauty in structure, and knowing that if you build a foundation correctly, it will hold. My life, up until this all began, was as well structured as one of my designs. I had a small but comfortable apartment overlooking a park, a job that challenged and fulfilled me, and a best friend, Sarah, who I'd known since college. We were the kind of friends who could communicate with just a look, who had seen each other through terrible haircuts, bad breakups, and career anxieties. Life was good. It was stable. It was normal, and I cherished that normality more than I ever realized. My dreams were usually what you'd expect. Nonsensical collages of my day. Stress about a deadline might manifest as a skyscraper made of jelly. A funny conversation with Sarah might lead to a dream where we were inexplicably flying kangaroos. They were fleeting, forgettable, and completely meaningless. That's what I thought all dreams were. Then, one Tuesday night, something shifted. It wasn't a nightmare in the traditional sense. There were no monsters, no chasing. It was mundane, yet utterly unsettling. I dreamt I was standing in a stranger's kitchen. I could feel the cold tile on my bare feet. I could smell burnt toast. On the counter, a blue ceramic mug with a chipped rim sat next to a newspaper. The headline was stark and clear, the font so vivid I could almost feel the ink. Sudden frost decimates valley orchards. The dream ended. I woke up, not in a cold sweat, but with a strange sense of clarity. The image of that headline seared into my brain. I shook my head, made my coffee, and dismissed it as just another weird dream. My brain was just processing stuff. That evening, as I was scrolling through the news on my tablet, I froze. There it was. Not a local paper, but a regional one from a state hundreds of miles away. Unseasonable snap frost annihilates cherry orchards in Crestfall Valley. The wording was different, but the event, the core of it, was identical. My blood ran cold. It had to be a coincidence, a bizarre, specific, one-in-a-million coincidence. I mean, I'd probably seen a weather report or something that my subconscious had latched onto, right? I forced myself to believe that it was the only logical explanation. But a week later, it happened again. This time, the dream was more chaotic. I was in a crowded, noisy room. The air was thick with the smell of stale beer and electricity. On a massive screen, stock tickers were plummeting. One in particular caught my eye, a tech company called Innovate Dynamics, Yen. The green letters turned blood red and cascaded downwards in a waterfall of failure. I felt a collective gasp in the room, a wave of panic. I woke up with my heart pounding. This time, I didn't wait. I got up, my hands trembling slightly as I searched for Innovate Dynamics, stock. It was stable, even trending slightly up in after-hours trading. I felt a wave of relief, followed by a pang of embarrassment. I was letting my dreams get to me. I was being ridiculous. I went to work, determined to put it out of my mind. Around 2 p.m., my colleague Mark let out a loud groan from his desk. "You've got to be kidding me," he muttered, staring at his monitor. "What's up?" I asked, trying to sound casual. He spun his screen around. "Innovate Dynamics. They just announced a massive data breach and a federal investigation. The stock has been halted, but it's expected to be a complete bloodbath when trading resumes." I just stared. My throat went dry. The red cascading waterfall from my dream filled my vision. This was no longer a coincidence. This was a pattern. A creeping dread began to settle over my life. Sleep, my former sanctuary, became a place of anxiety. I started to fear closing my eyes, terrified of what I might see. The dreams became more frequent, more vivid. A minor fire in a downtown bookstore I frequented. A localized power outage in a specific neighborhood. Each time, I'd wake up with the premonition hanging over me like a shroud, and within a day or two, I'd see the news report that confirmed it. I was living in a constant state of low-grade terror. I felt like a helpless spectator in a theater of impending doom. I wasn't causing these things, but I knew about them. That knowledge was a heavy, suffocating burden. What was I supposed to do with it? Who could I possibly tell? Hey, I had a dream your bookstore was going to catch fire. They'd think I was a lunatic, or, worse, an arsonist. So I stayed silent, and the silence was eating me alive. Then came the bridge, the dream that changed everything. It started with sound, a low, groaning, metallic scream, like a dying wail. Then the image snapped into focus. I was standing on the riverbank, looking at the old Miller's Creek Bridge, a landmark in the next town over. It was dusk. The sky was a bruised purple. I saw the bridge start to sag in the middle, slowly at first, then with a horrifying lurch. I saw the headlights of a single car, a dark blue sedan, as it slid into the chasm. I felt the vibration in the ground, a deep, guttural tremor that shook my bones. I heard a splash, then an awful, deafening silence. I woke up gasping for air, drenched in sweat, the scream of twisting metal still echoing in my ears. This was different. This wasn't a stock market crash or a small fire. This was life and death. I couldn't just sit on this. I couldn't. For 2 days, I was a wreck. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the blue sedan disappearing into the dark water. The guilt was already forming, a preemptive poison in my soul. I had to do something. I tried to be rational. I looked up the bridge's inspection reports online. They were all clear. It was structurally sound. But my dream felt more real than any government document. On the 3rd day, my hands shaking, I called the non-emergency line for the town's police department. "Hi," I started, my voice cracking. I have a concern about the Miller's Creek Bridge." The dispatcher sounded bored. "What kind of concern, sir?" I tried to explain, stumbling over my words, trying to sound credible. "I have a strong reason to believe it's structurally unsafe, that it's in imminent danger of collapse." Her tone shifted from bored to suspicious. "And what is this reason, sir? Are you an engineer? Did you see something?" The logical questions I couldn't answer. "No, It's hard to explain. It's a premonition. I had a very, very vivid dream." The line went silent for a moment. I could practically hear her rolling her eyes. "A dream, sir," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "We don't dispatch units based on dreams. If you have tangible evidence, call us back." The line clicked dead. Humiliation washed over me. I felt like a fool. But the vision of the collapsing bridge wouldn't leave me. I tried the city council, the public works department. I got the same response everywhere. A polite but firm dismissal. I was just some crackpot, a voice on the phone they could easily ignore. I was powerless. The weight of what I knew was crushing me. I began to hope, to pray, that I was wrong, that I really was just losing my mind. That would be so much better than the alternative. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat in my dark living room, watching the city lights, feeling utterly alone. Around sunset, my phone buzzed with a news alert. My heart stopped. I knew what it was before I even read it. "Tragedy in Northwood, Miller's Creek Bridge collapses during evening commute." I clicked on the article, my vision blurring with tears. It described how the bridge had suddenly given way. They mentioned one confirmed vehicle had gone into the water, a dark blue sedan. The rescue operation was ongoing. I dropped my phone. A sob escaped my lips, a raw, ragged sound of pure agony. I wasn't crazy. I was right. And because I was right, someone was dead. Or dying. The guilt was no longer a poison, it was a tidal wave, and it was drowning me. I had known. I had tried to warn them, and they hadn't listened. But did I try hard enough? Should I have gone there, stood with a sign, screamed until someone took me seriously? What would you have done in my place? What is the right thing to do when you hold an impossible truth that nobody will believe? Please, write it in the comments. I've asked myself that question 1,000 times. The aftermath of the bridge collapse sent me into a spiral. I became a ghost in my own life. I barely ate. I avoided sleep, often staying up until dawn, propped up by caffeine, just to avoid the cinema of horrors in my own mind. I was terrified of what I might see next. My work suffered. My boss pulled me aside, concerned. I mumbled something about family problems. How could I possibly explain the truth? Sarah was worried sick. She kept calling, texting, trying to get me to open up. Alex, what is going on? You look terrible. Talk to me. But I couldn't. The bridge incident had proven that telling the truth was not only useless, but made me sound insane. If I told her, I risked losing the one person I had left. I'd see the look in her eyes. Pity, maybe, but also fear. The fear that her best friend had finally cracked. So I pushed her away, with vague excuses and hollow reassurances. The isolation was absolute. I was an island, surrounded by a sea of my own dark knowledge. For a few weeks, the dreams were quiet. I began to hope it was over, a bizarre, traumatic chapter of my life that had finally closed. I started sleeping again, tentatively at first, then more deeply. I started to feel like myself again. I called Sarah and apologized, making up a story about burnout from work. She was so relieved, she accepted it without question. We made plans. Things felt like they were getting back to normal. And then, one night, I had the dream. The one that made the bridge feel like a distant memory. The one that made the terror personal. It wasn't a public disaster. It was about Sarah. In the dream, I was in her car, a little red hatchback she adored. I wasn't me, though. I was a passenger, watching. She was driving, humming along to a song on the radio, one I knew she loved. It was raining. Not just raining, but a torrential downpour, the kind that blurs the world into a watercolor painting of gray and black. The windshield wipers were fighting a losing battle. I knew the road. It was the old highway that snaked through the mountains, the one she always took to visit her parents. I saw the green sign for the Eagle's Peak. Exit flashed by, slick with rain. Then it happened. A pair of blinding headlights appeared in our lane. A massive transport truck, swerving to avoid something I couldn't see. There was no time to react. I felt Sarah's foot slam on the brake. I heard her sharp intake of breath, a sound of pure, unadulterated terror. I saw the glint of the truck's chrome grille filling the windshield, and then darkness. Not the peaceful black of sleep, but a violent, wrenching void. I woke up with a scream lodged in my throat. I was hyperventilating, my body shaking uncontrollably. This wasn't about strangers anymore. This wasn't a news report. This was Sarah. I looked at my clock. 3:17 a.m. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. The details were so specific. The red car, the mountain highway, the rain, the Eagle's Peak exit, the swerving truck. It couldn't be a coincidence. My gift, my curse, had turned its gaze on the most important person in my life. The dilemma was agonizing. The bridge had taught me that warnings were futile. But this was different. I couldn't just call a faceless dispatcher. I had to look my best friend in the eye and tell her that my nightmare was about to become her reality. How? How do you say that? Hey, Sarah, I know you're planning on driving to your parents this weekend, but you can't. I had a bad dream. She'd think I was being overprotective, or worse, that the stress had finally gotten to me. She might agree not to go, just to appease me, but she would think I was losing my grip. And what if I was wrong? What if this was the one time it was just a dream? I would have damaged our friendship, perhaps irreparably, for nothing. But the alternative, the image of her red car, the sound of her terrified gasp, that was unthinkable. I would rather she hate me and be alive than love my memory. The choice was clear. It was terrifying, but it was clear. She was supposed to leave Friday after work. I spent all of Thursday in a fog of anxiety, rehearsing the conversation in my head. None of it sounded sane. Friday came. I called her at lunchtime. Hey, I said, my voice unnaturally high. What time are you heading out tonight? Probably around 7, she said, her voice cheerful. Why? Want to grab a coffee before I go? No, I said too quickly. Don't go. There was a pause. What? Alex, what are you talking about? My parents are expecting me. Just don't go. Please, Sarah. It's not safe. I could hear the confusion and concern in her voice. Not safe? What do you mean, the weather? It's just a little rain. It's more than the rain, I said, my voice breaking. I knew I had to tell her everything. Can I come over? Now? I left work, telling my boss I had a family emergency, which didn't feel like a lie. I drove to her apartment, my heart hammering against my ribs. She let me in, her face etched with worry. "Alex, you're scaring me. You look like you've seen a ghost." I sank onto her couch. "I have," I whispered, and then it all came out. The headline about the orchards, the stock market crash, and then the bridge. I told her about the dream, the phone calls, the dismissal, the news report. I told her about the guilt that had been hollowing me out for weeks. I saw the expression on her face shift from concern to disbelief, to a dawning, horrified understanding. She remembered how I'd been, how withdrawn and haunted I looked. "The blue sedan," she whispered. "That was in the news. I remember that." I nodded, tears welling in my eyes. I knew Sarah. I knew it was going to happen. Then I told her about my dream from the night before. I described her red car, the song on the radio, the mountain highway, the pouring rain, the Eagles Peak exit, the swerving truck. I didn't hold anything back. She stared at me, her face pale. "Alex, please," I begged, my voice cracking. "I am begging you, don't go, just for tonight. Leave tomorrow morning when the storm has passed. Please, just do this for me. Even if you think I'm completely insane, just humor the crazy person and stay home." I can't see that happen." She looked at me, really looked at me, and saw not a crazy person, but her best friend, terrified and broken. She saw the absolute, raw conviction in my eyes. After a long, silent moment, she nodded slowly. "Okay," she said softly. "Okay, Alex, I'll stay." The relief was so immense, I felt like I might collapse. But it was followed by a new tension. We ordered pizza and put on a movie, but neither of us was watching. We were just waiting. Waiting for the night to pass, for the clock to prove me wrong, for the morning to come so we could laugh about how crazy I'd been. Around 9 p.m., a local news station broke in with a special report. My blood turned to ice. A reporter was standing on the side of a road, drenched, with flashing emergency lights painting the background. The caption at the bottom of the screen read, "Major pileup on mountain highway near Eagles Peak exit." My head snapped towards Sarah. Her hands were covering her mouth, her eyes wide with terror. The reporter's voice was grim. A multi-vehicle accident, apparently caused when a transport truck jackknifed in the heavy rain, swerving into oncoming traffic. Several cars were involved. Authorities are describing the scene as catastrophic. We just sat there, in stunned, horrified silence. The sound from the TV faded into a dull roar in my ears. I looked at Sarah, and she looked at me. There were no words. She just reached out, her hand trembling, and gripped mine. In her eyes I saw not fear of me, but a profound, earth-shattering understanding. I hadn't lost my mind. I had saved her life. If this story is resonating with you, if you've ever felt that gut feeling you couldn't explain, consider subscribing. You're not alone in wondering about the mysteries that lie just beneath the surface of our reality. After that night, everything changed. The dreams stopped. Not my normal, nonsensical dreams, but the prophetic ones. The cinema of horrors in my mind went dark. The silence was a blessing, a relief so profound it felt like a physical weight being lifted off my soul. Sarah and I are closer than ever. There's a bond between us now that transcends friendship, forged in the crucible of an impossible truth. We don't talk about it much, but it's always there, a silent acknowledgement of the night the universe bent in our favor. But I'm left with the echoes. I'm left with the questions that haunt my waking hours. Why me? Why did it start? And why did it stop? Was it some kind of test? A burden I was meant to carry until I finally used it for something more than just helpless knowledge? Was saving Sarah the entire point of the whole horrifying ordeal? I don't have the answers. Maybe there are no answers. Maybe some things aren't meant to be understood, only survived. All I know is that I look at the world differently now. I know that the fabric of reality is thinner than we think, and that sometimes, in the dark of night, it can tear. and we can get a terrifying glimpse of what's on the other side. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. But I am eternally grateful that for one night I was able to hear the warning. Share your thoughts or theories in the comments. I read all of them. Have you ever experienced anything like this? A dream, a premonition, a moment of inexplicable knowing? I need to know I'm not the only one.